I was told that the green chair is where I'm supposed to sit, but I'm going to choose my own adventure this morning. So it is an honor to be here this morning to moderate the first panel session of this year's summit among our 4 county chief resilience officers, a group of women with whom I work closely and really respect and who likely need little in the way of introduction among this crowd. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Rhonda Haig, Chief Resilience Officer of Monroe County. Megan Houston, Director of the Division of Built Environment Risk Reduction for Palm Beach County, and of course the powerhouse behind this event. Welcome, Megan. Jennifer Hirado, Chief Resilience Officer, Broward County. And last, but certainly not least, Lauren Pata, Chief Resilience Officer, Miami-Dade County. All right, so we are going to hear later in the summit program from both our county mayors and administrators, so I do want to be sure to steer clear of topics that they might be speaking to. But in reflecting on this panel discussion among the CROs, it really struck me as someone who is deeply in the weeds of this work in the day-to-day, how much the longevity of the compact, 16 years now across budget and political cycles, is in so many ways a reflection of each of your dedication and personal engagement in this project, in this collaboration, and in the relationships over literal decades now. The staying power has also been about leadership having a broader aperture for the long game, understanding that resilience isn't just a passing trend, but a way of operating that in the long run undoubtedly improves efficiency and pays dividends in terms of safeguarding our communities and our economy. So while we find ourselves certainly in a challenging moment for this work, I think when we take stock of where we are and we take this broader view, we can see that many years of advanced planning and capacity building within the compact region has really laid the groundwork in securing very significant funding for implementation. When we consider state funding alone, the compact region has brought in to date more than $1 billion, with a B, $billion in just Resilient Florida implementation grant funding alone since that project was established just a handful of years ago. And yes, that should, thank you. That should garner applause, certainly. And we shouldn't lose sight of the bigger picture on the transition to clean tech and a cleaner energy economy either. The state ranks 3rd nationally in terms of deployed solar and 2nd in terms of EV registrations. And there's certainly enormous momentum being led by the private sector in terms of positioning our region as a leader on resilience tech, like with companies like Titan leading on the national stage, developing really novel low-carbon cement, and there's certainly many other examples, and we'll hear about them across the program as well. So this is real momentum and progress, and I just wanted to sort of ground in that before we get into it. That said, resilience is certainly in a different place than when we met on this stage a year ago in Key West. Resources for this work are more limited, and many local governments are facing budget constraints and certainly looking to ensure that funds are used as efficiently as possible. Several compact counties have had recent reorganizations, and in Miami-Dade County, we have a new Chief Resilience Officer, Lauren Pata. So, Lauren, I would like to start with you and welcome you as the new Chief Resilience Officer for Miami-Dade County and the head of the Department of Environmental Resources Management, or DERM, which has been reinstated as a fully independent agency under your leadership. I'd love to hear from you about what you're most focused on as you step into this role.
Thanks, Lauren. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And I think it's worth mentioning once more, I think we should all give a big round of applause to this powerhouse of women leaders on the stage. I think it's pretty impressive. Yeah. So like Lauren mentioned, at Miami-Dade County, we are rolling with the punches. We are reinventing ourselves to frankly make sure that resilience can continue far past even our current administration. Because I think for us, that really is the legacy, right? I mean, resilience and these investments are super important now, but I think the measure of success from where we stand is our ability to ensure that this work continues after our mayor is gone, after the heads of departments change, just our ability to, for lack of a better term, be resilient is so much of how we measure success. So I think for us in this moment in time, we're really focused on creating that stability, making sure that we are working with our county commission, which because of recent changes in Miami-Dade County is now going to change every 8 years, right? So we have term limits on our county commissioners, which makes it more important for us to be doing that really critical education. So whether it's working with our elected officials or reaching out to unlikely partners with, I think we mentioned developers and real estate agents. I mean, those are the folks that we really want to make sure are understanding these topics so that regardless of who is in office, we know that the private sector, nonprofits, community-based organizations are still in a position to continue doing that work.
Thanks, Lauren. We talked about this backdrop of more limited resources, and you touched on this a little bit, but is there a way in which the county is sort of pivoting to ensure continued momentum when there's really constrained resources?
Yeah, I mean, that problem is not unique to Miami-Dade County. I'm sure that all of my colleagues here are experiencing it themselves, and it's true not just for resilience, but for basically every big infrastructure project that our cities and municipalities are trying to move forward. So I think for us, it's actually making sure that, say, our Transportation and Public Works Department is in touch with our Division of Resilience, who are all here, making sure that they're working with them to update their Public Works manual, right? And so making sure that not only are we, say, applying for traditional Resilient Florida grants, but our transportation team is also applying for infrastructure grants that incorporate resilience, right? So it's not just, there's a decrease in resiliency funding, so that's the end. There's nothing else to be done. We're trying to consider Department of Emergency Management. How can they build in resilience into the work that they're trying to do? I think, again, just operationalizing resilience is how we're trying to make sure that we can continue to acquire funds, even though the reality is that it's limited.
Right, absolutely. Embedding across the whole of government. Megan, I'd love your thoughts on the same question. How are you all pivoting in Palm Beach County in this world of constraint?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we've always had constrained resources being in government. I've been here for almost 8 years now, and I've never had a budget cycle where Patrick Rutter was like, yeah, you have more things, have more people, have more stuff, right? Like, so we're always dealing with how do we spend taxpayer dollars judiciously. What we've spent the last few years using these amazing grants to do is to get the planning done, right? Like we've identified these top risks where we know it's extreme heat, extreme flooding in Palm Beach County. We've created this resilience project list that our mayor alluded to today, where we said, here are the 30 projects that we need to work on that will address these concerns the best. Some of those are already funded and happening, and that's amazing. And then the dozen or so that we're needing to find funding for, we're doing it within a new lens, right? Like where maybe it's not grant funding to work on the implementation side, or it's part of the traditional capital planning. So it's how do we, pivot from the planning efforts that we've laid the groundwork for telling us what to do and then doing the work. So really it's focusing about that implementation side. We're also producing, based off of the resources that we've done with our consultant team, thank you Tetra Tech if you're here, where we're now using that information to create these mini hazard assessments that Stacey and Javion from our team are working on. So as we're building capital projects, our project managers can use the resources that we've developed. They look at their site, they understand how flooding and heat is going to impact that site specifically. They work with Javion in identifying what resilience and sustainability principles they're going to be doing. And really, again, back to what Lauren was saying, it's about operationalizing resiliency. That's what we're pivoting to, right? Like the grant funding provided the planning efforts, and now it's about strategy and execution.
Thanks, Megan. Changing gears a little bit, it's pretty hard to believe, even for me. It was almost 13 years ago that the infamous Rolling Stones article, Goodbye Miami, was published. How many of you remember that piece? I see hands, okay. it really sent shockwaves through our community, and I think, among other things, sort of entrenched this doomsday scenario that it's either sink or swim for Southeast Florida. We either solve climate change completely, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees, or progress is futile. This is a kind of binary thinking that I think is unfortunately pervasive and really limiting in kind of the broader climate and resilience community. As one of the most at-risk regions globally to climate hazards, and as an early leader in this space, Jennifer, how do you think about this, and how has your thinking perhaps evolved over time?
Well, thanks, Lauren. You know, the 1.5 degree scenario, I think, is one that you know, it's been kind of difficult for folks to kind of wrap their heads around. We acknowledge that there are tipping points, and there's targets that we really should be attuned to. 1.5 is a significant target, but it is, as you say, it's not a sink or swim scenario. I think the challenge that we have today is, and that we really need to be cognizant of, is that we have not moved fast enough on our emissions reductions. Are we going to see impacts? Certainly. Are they going to be more severe than what we would have liked? Absolutely. I think it is well accepted that we've moved beyond the 1.5. The 2 degree scenario is the reality in the best case. That doesn't mean that we can't persist and even thrive under the 2 degree, but it also requires a much more extreme and accelerated investment in the infrastructure and adaptation investments that we're going to need to make as a community. And one thing that, you know, as a result of some conversations over the last week, we're preparing for an event in Broward County, and we'll be working on the topic of risk and finance and, you know, the bond markets and so forth. And one of the things that we've explored is this idea that, you know, South Florida has always been a high-risk environment. And despite that, there's been no shortage of investors. And, you know, there's been this contemplation, oh, well, are we going to see bond ratings, you know, decline? And will the cost of, you know, financing increase? And the story is across the board, we're not seeing that yet. Now, what we are seeing is some indications that in the reinsurance market for bonds, they're starting to see some triggers there, and I think that we really need to be attuned to that. But why are we not seeing these other kind of indicators, you know, play out today? And the kind of the word is that we have this reputation and historic practice of being really able to own and address risk. We've got really robust emergency management systems, and we've been building code and so forth. And so there's been this kind of assurance that, yeah, despite the risk, it's still a really, you know, stable environment in the way of investment. We are really going to be on the hook for not exhausting that reputation. And increasingly, in the absence of certainty with regards to where the federal government will sit and FEMA, we're going to have to own that in its entirety. And I think that reality that, and Obi showed it in the slides, every indicator is going in the direction of more extreme circumstances, and every indicator relating to heat is accelerating much faster than what was predicted. And we see this rainfall intensification, urban rainfall intensification is playing out across the globe. So what I would say is it's not a fait accompli, but we have got to own the magnitude and scale of the investments that have to take place. We have reputational benefits that we've inherited and can carry with us, but we cannot exhaust that. We can't abuse that. We're going to have to make those demonstrations of this proven practice moving forward. And I think the more critical thing that I want to say as well is on the 1.5 degree, while we might not have been able to constrain that temperature exceedance, and the story is coming out of COP, you know, the COP 30 event, we need to target that in terms of our emissions reductions. Just because we've passed it doesn't mean that that isn't still our target. And we need to remind of the importance of achieving that stabilization, even if it's on recovery. And so just keeping those two things in mind, I think, is really where we need to be as a region.
Excellent points. Rhonda, anything that you'd like to add?
Sure. So I've been coming up on this stage many, many years, and you've all heard about our programs in the Keys, the $2.5 billion road elevation program, $2.5 billion Army Corps program with 4,680 home elevations in it. So many, many billions of dollars. And so we jumped the gun. We tried to prepare for this because we are one of the most vulnerable communities in the state with our 100 miles of islands. What we've learned along the way is we got a big jump on the start of it, and we're underway with our first road elevation demonstration project in Twin Lakes and Key Largo, so we're very happy about that. But what we also learned along the way is that we can't do everything really fast, even though Rhonda wants to do everything really fast. We have to work with our constraints. Everybody knows what's going on in Tallahassee, some potential tax reductions there through the local governments, and so we're gearing up right now to build up our reserves in Monroe County. We're slowing down a little bit on some of our resilience projects. Doesn't mean we're stopping because we still have $300 million worth, but we're also looking at alternatives and we're listening to what residents say. And if they don't, a lot of them don't understand the big resilience projects, the big road elevation projects that would be in their neighborhood. And so they're asking us to look at smaller ones where they don't have to pay an assessment, to be truthful. And so we're looking at those. A lot of those are going to be more difficult because we're just so low in the county that, we can't just dig a trench and get rid of the water. So we're looking at alternatives as much as we can, but we still, we're still aimed on that long-term goal. We want to keep the Keys resilient because it's such a fabulous place to come. So we really need long-term resilience projects along the way.
Thanks, Rhonda. I think the point, Jennifer, that you made about local ownership and just the need to really accelerate our efforts in adaptation and response to the reality that we face. One of the things that I've reflected on over the last year is just the role of government in this work, right? This is certainly not a new conversation for the Compact. For many years, the Compact has talked about how local government can't go it alone in terms of building community resilience. But in reflecting on both efficiency and efficacy, what are the areas where local government is uniquely positioned to lead and to be central on building resilience? And where might we need more partnerships, particularly unlikely partnerships, or to encourage other entities to take more leadership? Lauren, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Lauren. So I love this question because I actually think that we as South Florida, but even the entire state of Florida, we have been working on these issues for such a long time under whatever title we needed to talk about it to make sure that the work got done. And I feel very strongly that over the past year or so, this community has been better positioned to pivot and continue doing this work than some of our partners in, say, California or New York that had never faced these headwinds before. I mean, we have staff in the Department of Environmental Resource Management that say, I was here 20 years ago, the last time we went through an administration change like this. I have all the files from then. I have the language that we can use. I have proven, records of how we can continue to get this work done. So I think for South Florida, I like knowing that we are really well positioned to keep doing this work. And I think specifically to Lauren's question around local government's unique role, we are the front lines, right? When people have flooding in their neighborhood, they're not calling FEMA, they're not calling the president, they're calling us. And so I think our City of Miami CRO said this in a speech once, and I've never forgotten it. For us, resilience is about meeting people where they are. And so when we get a call about flooding in your neighborhood, you better make sure that your response is not only solving that issue for them, but also tying it back to, actually, this is why that infrastructure investment is so important. So when that question comes to them, they feel better prepared to not only agree and support, but in their own way, continue doing this work in their community as well.
What about you, Rhonda? How do you see the interplay between local government and community and stakeholders?
We kind of have two sets of stakeholders in the Keys. First of all, the municipalities, the other 5 municipalities. Monroe's working very closely with them to help them do their own road elevation planning so that they can get their grant applications in and get some road adaptation projects also. So we're going to be wrapping that up this year, so probably next year, hopefully we'll have a municipality up here talking about their first project. And then, of course, is the more, just as Lauren said, the community group, also very important. So you heard me say we jumped out ahead of there and tried to get, you know, a bunch of grant funds for several road adaptation projects. And even though we had worked with like one community for several years, the Stillwright Point neighborhood in Key Largo, and we ended up getting $41 million in grant funds, and we didn't know right until the end how much right-of-way we needed of the front yard so that we could put in that additional drainage as we were making the roadways higher. And so the community didn't accept that. They couldn't do that because their houses are very close to the road, and they just didn't want to accept that. So we canceled that project, and it was very hard. And so now that community is not going to have a road adaptation project, and probably would turn into a part-time neighborhood. So it's very important. Sometimes just you don't know. We work with them for years, and until you get that final piece of technical information or whatever, you get some new homeowners in that maybe don't understand the long-term needs of resilience, and then you have to just move on. So we still have 250 million other projects that we're undergoing, and we're trying, you know, very hard to keep those moving forward.
Turning to the future, as CROs, your jobs are both about working to fortify and adapt vulnerable areas and assets, but also about future-proofing development and visioning what our communities are going to look like in 30 plus years from now. What do you hope to see when you think about that, and what do you think it will take to get us there? Megan, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I was, Lauren may or may not have told me this question in advance, but I was researching what things were like 30 years ago, and didn't even use Gemini. I went in some census data, right? So 30 years ago in Palm Beach County, we had 1 million people. Now we have 1.5 million people. That's 50% increase, and I suspect the growth will continue. So when we're talking about 30 years from now, we have a chance to use that increased density, that increased population, in a way that aligns with the things that we write about in our regional climate action plan, about smart growth and transit-oriented development, things, you know, walkable corridors, and all the things that our planning friends are really supportive of and want to see happen. So I still think, even though we've been in this space for a long time, right, like when we're talking about sustainability and resiliency, people can think of it as like we're trying to take away their car keys and take away their indoor plumbing and things like that. We are not. and so, right, like they see it as a way that's some austere life, perhaps. But what I would like to see is that density as a way to increase that smart growth, that, you know, what we're talking about with those principles. We can achieve 35% tree canopy coverage. We can achieve, you know, these walkable cores that really are enhancing the residents' quality of life. It's enhancing resident amenities. And to get there, it's having that shared vision that some people can identify and understand what that is and want it and seek it. And then our leadership are, you know, they're responding to what their constituents are asking for. The developers are responding to what the market is asking for. That can't come, you know, solely from local government, back to your point earlier about what can local government do, right? Like, it is our job to show what that vision can look like and garner support for it.
Thanks, Megan. Jennifer, what do you hope for when you think about 30 plus years from now, and what do we need to get there?
So that's interesting. So for public employees, you know, that's for many, perhaps many, you know, 30 years is your career. And kind of thinking about where we've been over the last, in my case, little over 20, and how much has been accomplished, but then how much more we need to see in the way of change in the next 30 years is really tremendous, because I think the scale of what's required will exceed what I think I've realized so far in the course of my career. And I'll say specifically with regards to, you know, Broward County, you know, we've completed this countywide resilience plan, and I think one of the most critical products from that, in my opinion, is we've established a future conditions water basin storage map. And, you know, basically this, it accounts for all of the storage that we modeled and says, regardless of how you get there, this is the allocation per basin. You're going to have to find a way to integrate that either into individual projects or into, you know, organized redevelopment. And I think we're going to have to acknowledge the need to set aside land and find that within our footprint moving forward. And it could be creative public-private projects where you're saying this redevelopment need is really intense. We're going to do great workforce housing, but we're going to acknowledge that this green space is going to be a sizable component of this project, and it is going to serve perhaps not only this project, but provide an added benefit for the surrounding community, because other areas may not be redeveloping at the same rate. And you're going to have to take advantage of those projects, which are projects of opportunity. And we've got those tools there. And I want to acknowledge that the land use planning process is really critical. We need that tool. And we need to have that local flexibility to address resilience as part of our projects, especially when local governments are the ones that are on the hook. And if we fail, we're going to start to see those market indicators start to evolve. So we really have to find a way to make sure that we don't lose those, those moments of opportunity, especially as it relates to storage. I want to say that with respect to the heat issue, and again, some of the benefit of being able to travel and be exposed to other communities, there are many communities that have established standards like 40% green cover. However you get there, it could be bioswales, it could be embedded in the building envelope, but you need that for cooling. And that is, that increase in heat. The one way, well, we've got two ways to address that. One, build green infrastructure, and two, support weatherization programs to help people afford energy. But you can also reduce those energy demands through your green infrastructure. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. Singapore is an incredible model as it relates to integration of green infrastructure. Not only have they done it, but they've done it with success in terms of temperature reductions. They were able to reduce temperatures within their community by, and I'm translating it to Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Fahrenheit by virtue of those investments. They've integrated green infrastructure into what they call skyrise greenery and green walls. And basically, if you've got a development and there's been an impact, not only do they have to mitigate on the site, but they mitigate within the building structure. That's reduced their heat absorption within the buildings and that surrounding area by 7.2 degrees Fahrenheit. And green infrastructure, green roofs reduce runoff by 60%. We don't have enough in the way of storage and stormwater management systems. We're going to have to find ways. And I think oftentimes we say, well, but we receive more rain than these other communities, and of course they can do it because they get more of a drizzle. Well, Singapore, I did the math, in recent years received 120 inches of rainfall. That's twice what we receive in South Florida, and it's impossible to say that they are so distinct that that model, for whatever reason, doesn't translate to opportunities in our region. So we're, in my opinion, will really need to embrace a different type of approach as it relates to green infrastructure in the whole of our community to address both water and heat, and the benefit of the green infrastructure is it does both.
I love the fact that you brought. Green infrastructure, always a hit. I love the fact that you brought in an international example, and I think, one of the things for me that has shifted, it was actually pretty hard to come up with questions. We've been doing this for 17 years that we haven't covered before, that the mayors and the administrators aren't going to talk about. But one of the things that has shifted since last year, at least for me, as a person that tries to spend as much of my personal time in the analog world as possible, is just the pervasiveness and the expansion of AI. And we are going to have an entire session tomorrow talking about tech, and I know that AI is likely to be part of that conversation. But from your perspective as CROs, how do you all see AI impacting the resilience space? I mean, this is a global technology, to your point about kind of looking globally at other examples. But how do you really see it impacting us locally in the work that you do every day, Lauren?
So Megan's right. Lauren did send us all the questions ahead of time so that we could practice and think about this. This is the question that I went to sleep thinking about last night. On a personal level, I think like Lauren, I do my best to stay away. In my personal life, I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to AI, but that's not generative for this discussion. So I really wanted to think about an actual concrete example of what I think we can do with AI. And our deputy CRO, Julie Dick, called me yesterday. And at Miami-Dade County, we actually have a strategic procurement department that does all of the contracting for the 20-some departments for Miami-Dade County. And we're putting together this new procurement guide, and we're trying to build in sustainability. So whether it's purchasing goods from a local business that does mitigation credits, or just any form of improving resiliency, we want to make sure that that's built in. But right now, our deputy CRO is single-handedly reviewing almost every contract that comes through Miami-Dade County. And I thought, that's probably not the best use of her time. It's obviously incredibly important, and it matters to make sure that somebody is making these checks. But I did think to myself, it's actually probably something that we could get AI to help her with, because we know that it's important. It's coming at such a high volume for local governments, I think the size and the scale of ours, that I actually did think that AI might be a good tool to incorporate when we think about large scale and high volume contracting to try and build in resilience.
Jennifer, what about you? Any thoughts on AI and the future of resilience?
Well, I like Lauren's response. I wish that we were inviting our our department director, Lenny Volpondo, up here, because he's much more practiced in the thoughtfulness regarding technology opportunities. Some of the work that we're doing currently involves utilizing sensor-based systems as part of our stormwater management system. We're just piloting, beginning to deploy this, but in part, it's having real-time information to help reveal what's happening with regards to on-the-ground flood conditions, utilizing instantaneous messaging and so forth to communicate to the public. But we have also acknowledged that as you begin to build these systems out, you'll be able to do much more in the way of predictive modeling over short periods of time in order to help reveal the escalation of flood conditions. So I think that there's an immense opportunity to use AI for proactive warnings and communications. In addition, I think utilizing AI, right now when we do modeling, we run very discrete scenarios and we hold those in the cloud, and so you can pull up whatever you modeled, but AI allows you to do much more in the way of iterative work. I think it'll help support more community-based planning, allowing for the quick call up of visualizations like instantaneously. Well, what if you do this? And we'll be able to pull that, I think, much more quickly and effectively with more practical or real depictions, and support the community-based initiatives that will help ensure more successful resilient solutions and outcomes for the community. I think it's also important, though, to recognize that the increased demand for AI and integration and the data storage and the servers that are involved, it creates a new challenge that we're all sensitive to in terms of it's counter our emissions goals, emissions reductions goals, and it's also resulting in sizable increase in energy costs that are being borne in most instances by an entire community, and that's coupled with increased demands for cooling, and so economically, that's another question. So what I will say there is that my understanding is that about 15 to 17 of the largest 20 data centers in the world are located in C40 communities. Those are communities that have committed to real, net zero goals. And they are in the process of working to develop standards that would ideally support internationally considerations of what to require for, data centers. How do you manage that? And I think that we should just watch that process, because we have data centers that are being proposed and will likely be needed in our communities, and thinking about how we can support, localize, maybe they could be green hydrogen with providing their own on-site energy production to fuel those operations. There could be evolutions in the future for, modular scale, nuclear that could come on site. I think that we need to open our minds to energy solutions that feel non-traditional because they've not been deployed, but recognize that we can't achieve enough in the way of emissions reductions to compensate for a lot of these demands, and that'll have to be part of the way we begin to evolve in terms of how we think or what are acceptable energy solutions.
Great points. I personally was really struck this hurricane season. I know everybody in this room watches those models like June to November now, right, with bated breath of just like how pervasive the AI models were in during hurricane season, and just how successful they were, really. And then we're fortunate we have academic partners in the region. I know at the Rosenstiel School, UM's Rosenstiel School, they're leading on some of the AI modeling work, and some of our other academic institutions that are here are probably doing the same. Most of you have been at the Compact table for many years, Jennifer and Rhonda almost since the beginning, should I say, and Megan for nearly 8 years. I'd love for you to reflect on what the partnership and collaboration has meant to each of you in terms of supporting your ability to move your own resilience priorities forward, and where you might hope to see the partnership go into the future. Rhonda, can I start with you?
Sure. So I have been here a long time, not quite as long as Jennifer. So back when, this is our 17th annual summit, so 17 years ago, there wasn't a resilience program anywhere. There wasn't an energy saving program anywhere. And so when the Compact came aboard, I think I came in year 2, that's where we really first got started. So it's been so much along the way. You heard Obi's presentation this morning. So, we developed that resilient climate action plan. And it's not just how we went and got into that, but I listened to a lot of the technical experts, behind the scenes putting together that program. And that's where I really learned. You try to sit in on meetings with Obi and listen to them and try to figure it out. You have to really pay attention and do some research. So that's been very interesting for me. That's where I get a lot of my ideas, listening to Jennifer and Megan and Lauren now. We move back and forth with each other. We play off a lot of ideas. When we have technical needs, I call up Jennifer or Megan, whoever, and get some information if I need it in terms of rainfall or whatever, and how would you handle this type of situation in the Keys. So the resilience program in the Monroe County is not, Rhonda Haig's program. It's really a collaboration of all the Compact members and how best to move forward and with individualized responses for each area, but based on a regional collaborative, and it's been super helpful for me. And that's one of the main things that keeps me moving is like, okay, we gotta have hope because there's still regional coordination going on. We could never do it on our own in Monroe County. We could never do it with even all the municipalities working together. That regional coordination is really important. Also important in terms of funding and helping look at the whole Resilient Florida grant program. I think that's a direct result of the Compact and our many actions over the past few years. And so here we are moving the whole state forward.
Love that, thank you. Megan, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I'll add to what Rhonda is saying. It has been such an important partnership for me to be onboarding in 2018 with the Palm Beach County Office of Resilience that was new. I was the first employee, even though resiliency had been ongoing through prior staff and coordination. So a lot of times I talk about our office as a startup within a large bureaucracy, and we're doing things for the first time a lot of times within Palm Beach County, like EV charger procurement, one of the things Javion has to deal with every day. But like we hadn't done that before, but other people in our community have. And so, it's not really going at it alone. There are people who call my cell phone, Patrick or commissioners, where I'm like running over to get it and make sure it doesn't go to voicemail. And Jennifer, Lauren, Rhonda are in that circle where I'm like, if I can physically answer that call, I do, because it's that closeness of support that we have that really is exceptional. I don't know if I've had a prior role where there was that kind of trust and partnership with people who were not directly, coworkers and colleagues. So that has just been a lovely thing to help elevate this work. Where we can progress, I think, as a Compact, we sometimes struggle with how do we choose a project within South Florida that we can help advance, right? Like 109 jurisdictions, 2 tribal communities, 4 counties, like that is a lot to navigate. And I think we had one successful application as a practice. It didn't go through, right? When we were talking about how do we retrofit housing, and even that just as a thought experiment was challenging. So how do we think about tapping into those broader project-oriented funding structures and how do we collectively advance green infrastructure through the compact? What does that look like? I think we can dive into that hopefully at our next planning retreat. And then on the legislative side, I'm excited about how we can strengthen that as a tool for us, and maybe pivot to, we were just talking and brainstorming, right? Instead of having a policy platform, but like, yes, that's super important, that's super helpful for us, but also during session, being more in dialogue so that we can respond quickly to things that come across our plates, our desks, and provide input collectively. I think that is a really important area that we can grow and expand, and be a useful tool for helping to put good policy forward.
Jennifer, you are truly the godmother of the compact. You have like raised this baby up. I love your thoughts.
Oh, I'm not sure that that sounds flattering, but in any event. So I thought about this question with respect to also acknowledging that there was a time when we weren't working regionally, and no one was talking about climate. None of us knew how to enter into that. Like, we were just, infants. And I remember one of the most maybe pivotal kind of career opportunities was attending a NOAA-hosted community of practice. And it was on climate, and it was the first time that practitioners from different walks came together to talk about what does climate mean in the course of your work and your responsibilities and whatever role you had. And I feel like that was a major opportunity for professional development at a personal level and growth. And I hope that the compact has kind of done that for everyone in our region, that we've generated our own community of practice. And I think about the number of younger people who have maybe come through our respective offices, and all of the resilience personnel who work across the entire field. And I feel like we've really worked to generate an incredible competency and capacity and credibility that is now reflected across our region by virtue of the incredible professionals that are embedded and then working in support capacities across all those partnerships. And so that's been really enabling, both as in my own work and then as a region. And I think that that's an incredible just value of the compact that's shared. The partnerships with the cities, I think if it weren't for the compact and having some of the shared platforms, I suspect we'd all kind of be wandering. Mm-hmm. And so having something that's so uniting, oftentimes, I see the references to the Regional Climate Action Plan, our regional sea level rise projection. If we didn't have that, what would be the strength of the work that we were proposing? It would feel less robust. The work that OBI has done, and the many academic partners, but shared in the presentation here on rainfall intensification. And that's really critical work that has reinforced the quality of what we've been able to bring to our policy recommendations. And so it has been so powerful and such an evolution over now nearly 2 decades that I just can't imagine having the same foundation absent having coming together as a regional. So I think it's just been incredibly altering to where we would have been versus where we are.
Again, you talked about just learning from each other, but I will say other regions reach out to the compact to learn about the compact's experience. Just in the last 2 months, I've been on the line with both the Greater Charleston area and the Greater New Orleans area, who are both about to launch a similar regional resilience collaborative to the compact, and wanting to learn about the experience that we've had in Southeast Florida. Some of what they asked about was just kind of about the staying power, and I reflected on that in my opening remarks. Jennifer, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on just kind of what has been the glue that has held this together for the last 16 years now.
I think I would have to go to the comment that Megan made, the personal relationships where I think we've all talked about, we feel like we're like shared, the partners in the other counties are just extensions of our own kind of, not work team, but you know, the resources. I mean, we're just, I think we kind of feel embedded in each other's work efforts. The relationships are very personal. They've endured through lots of transitions in leadership. But our leadership, ultimately, when there are, you know, challenges, our leaders have continued to emphasize and communicate the importance of this work. And it doesn't require a lot of funding, but it does require financial support. Your services as serving as a facilitator and project manager for the compact have been pivotal. We don't have the capacity to do the work that you've done for us. And so, you know, honestly, the collaboration with ISC and your work, Lauren, has, I think, been one of the critical glues from the very beginning.
Oh, that's kind. I wasn't looking for that response, but anything anyone else would like to add on that question? If not, let's wrap things up. I'd like each of you to share what you're most excited about as it relates to your work in the coming year or even beyond that. And Lauren, maybe I'll start with you.
Rats, everyone gets a few more minutes to think about it. What am I most excited about? I would say that I'm most excited about, yesterday we had our Durham holiday party, and our Durham team is over 200 people, and I of course haven't met all of them yet, having just come into this role, but I realized that we have this extraordinary group of water engineers, and Gallo, who's here, is their division chief, and unbeknownst to me, I think 9 out of 10 of them are immigrants. And each of them are really skilled at what they do, but also are uniquely positioned to help us, to help our mayor, to help our county commissioners talk about these issues in a way that makes sense to unlikely partners. And so for Miami-Dade, where we have a huge Spanish-speaking community, that is our constant reality. And I think for us, so much of what we want to do is make sure that the everyday resident understands what we're doing, that we're not just an obstacle for them to start their small business or to build their new house, but instead we're actually trying to protect the resources that they rely on every single day. And for us, language really, really matters. Not just the terms that we're using, but the actual language that we're talking to them in. And so I think that what I'm most excited about is making sure that we can work with not just our mayor, but all of our county commissioners that represent really diverse Spanish-speaking, Creole-speaking districts so that we can, frankly, do a better job of communicating this really important work.
Excellent. I love that. Rhonda.
Sure. So anybody that knows Rhonda knows I'm a big projects person. So this coming year, we have 3 big projects, road adaptation projects, that are going to be finishing their design and permitting. That's Flagler Avenue in Key West, 2 miles, $100 million road adaptation project. Woo! That's not an elevation. That's just, we're going to gut the road and re-put it back the same level, but with heavy-duty drainage because that's an urban area, so that's not road elevation, but it's just as good. And then we have Big Coppet in the Lower Keys, 4 miles, about $80 million. That's a road elevation project, so we're working forward. We're having a neighborhood meeting there in the next month and keeping that project going. We have also Winston Waterways in Key Largo. That's about $50–60 million road elevation project. That's also going to be done in May with the design and engineering. So we have about $250 million in grant funds, state and federal. So we really, really hope we're going to be able to work with the neighborhoods and keep those projects moving, because that's really the 3 premier projects, and we really need to get them under the way and get them built, and I'm just so excited about it.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what are you most excited about in the coming year?
Okay, so, well, this year, earlier in March, we did finalize our countywide resilience plan. Our commission, even in the tightest of budget years, was able to allocate some funds to support implementation. And so we just completed a grant call announcement to our municipal partners. We're going to be able to support some early implementation of projects that were identified in the resilience plan. And we are getting ready to announce a call for projects where we're going to be looking for some Section 219 funding, for which we were authorized a couple of years ago. And so what I'm excited about is really trying to bring money to projects, follow in Monroe's footprints, and really work to get projects advanced on the ground and show superior leveraging of funds. The other thing, though, is, of course, the CNSF, the Section 203 study that's part of the, addressing the Broward Basins as part of this Central South Florida Flood Control Project. And through incredible work and leadership of the South Florida Water Management District, the Army Corps of Engineers, cost share funds that were provided again by our county commission, recognize the importance of moving this project. We're on the verge of wrapping up that study. We've already got the tentatively selected plan. We've got 5 pumps that are proposed for that project, and we're eager to get that authorized and appropriations in this next year. It will be an incredible milestone, and I can't say that without acknowledging Glenn Landers, who is here. I hope he'll raise his hand. Glenn has been a former employee with the Army Corps of Engineers, an incredible friend and resource and partner to the compact going all the way back. And it was Glenn who authored the initial, I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to call it the project implementation report that really spelled out what needed to happen and why it was in the federal interest to advance this revised flood risk resilience study for the CNSF system as a whole. And without that reference point, we wouldn't have had the argument to present that allowed us to be successful in advancing what was the 216 and now the 203 study, and that was Glenn's work, and I just want to acknowledge Glenn, incredible partner.
Megan, I'll give you the last word, other than not having to host the 2026 summit, which has not been stressful at all. What are you most looking forward to in the coming year?
Yes, I love all of you. I'm so happy you're here, but I agree with Lauren's first point of that. Yes, I'm happy that Broward will be hosting. We also have a name change, right? Built environment risk reduction, and in addition to being aligned with what we're focused on, one funny thing it solves is the problem that people misunderstood me of my name, Office of Resilience. They would consistently hear Office of Brazilians, so it solves that problem. Nothing against the country, never been there, don't speak Portuguese, so. But to bring it back to serious talks, right? Focus on risk reduction. I said it was easy to say, and now I'm stumbling on it. We are also excited to launch projects in 2026 that focus on that, not just within our work, but our partners. Green K Phase 2 is an amazing expansion with our Water Utilities Department that's focused on combining traditional infrastructure needs, cleaning water, and providing amazing birding, wildlife habitat, a high tourism industry attraction. So things like that, I'm excited to see that progress and develop. We are also working with our partners within Palm Beach County, our municipalities. Valentina Alvarez is here. She's going to be hosting a May 2026 workshop with our Palm Beach County municipalities on how we take all of our vulnerability assessment information and can we focus and pick out some adaptation projects that we as municipalities and county folks can partner on. So we are super excited about that 2026 Resilient Florida cycle for the adaptation side, and we're going to be putting some good work together in that way. So I'm excited about those projects.
Excellent. Well, this has been a really rich discussion. Thank you, ladies, so much for all the really important work that you do every day, and of course, your continued dedication to this partnership. So enjoy lunch. I think we're between you all and lunch.
Thank you, Lauren.